You want to pull the... Thank you. Got it. Okay, so welcome everybody to this second roundtable that Transboundary Watering Cooperation Network is organizing. The first one was yesterday about track 3, civic diplomacy, and today we are focused on science diplomacy part. And especially we want to unveil to the larger Environmental Peacebuilding Association our initiative that's called Highlands to Oceans, Anticipatory Governance of Hydroclimatic Regime Shifts in Transboundary river basins, and our current focus is in Amazon, Indus, Mekong, and Jordan river basins. I'm really pleased to have a very distinguished panel. Some of the panelists you heard yesterday, but it's really an incredible representation of panelists from these 4 river basins, but as well as the pioneer of this Highlands to Ocean initiative, Professor Dr. Mickey Glantz. He's joining us from Boulder, Colorado. And I'll go through the bios of the entire range of our panelists. After the plan is that I will just start by giving you a 5-minute overview of this Highlands to Ocean initiative. And then Dr. Taikis Oikonomu, who's been working with me on the Highlands to Ocean initiative, is going to provide about a 10-minute summary of what we found during the Road to Geneva event that was organized in the summer. Then I will introduce the panelists in a little bit more detail so that they are fresh in your memory. And I will request all the panelists to turn on their screens, video screens, so people can see them. And also, before we launch into this, I just want to make this announcement on behalf of the Environmental Peacebuilding Association that this is the second round meeting that was supposed to happen in Geneva, but it's now hybrid, more or less online, and it's a great platform. It's a great organization. I would really encourage you all to be part of this, become part of and active members of this international association. I've myself learned a lot. Very recently, I was elected its director Asia Pacific in the board of directors for this association, and my tenure just started on this. And I'm really have a really incredible network of people, and it's very well aligned with what we are trying to do here as part of the Transboundary Watering Cooperation Network. I also want to, in the chat, there is the conference has a very strong policy about mutual respect and collaboration. And one of the requirements is about, if you experience any discrimination, harassment, or retaliation policy, there's a link. And they're very active about, please email the people that are responsible to them if you experience any of these kind of events. So with that, I'm going to launch right into the Highlands to Oceans discussion with some overview of these events. So Highlands to Ocean is I would say it's not a new concept, as Mickey would say probably more about it. These discussions started in as early as probably in mid 20th century, but with the climate change and some of these other global change dynamics coming in, these concepts are like the integrated approach about how do we connect highlands with lowlands and even oceans, because the river systems are not, it's not just about transboundary part nature of it, it's like how they are integrated in terms of setting up these ecosystems that cross, say in Himalayas, going all the way to the Indian Ocean, or there are 7 rivers stemming from Himalayas that are going into feeding about 2 billion people, so-called the third pole of the world. So this discussion, this project has been one of the major initiatives that we are undertaking as part of our Transboundary Water Initiative to enable science diplomacy in the global hotspots of the world. So most recently in the 2021, the World Met Organization just recently released this report that basically identifies, if you look on the South America, this is how hotspots are in the red circles. Southwestern US, these are the hotspots in terms of water scarcity and water stress. South Africa, then there's this Sahel region. There are Middle Eastern parts here, South Asia, and of course some of these northern parts of Europe, even Central Asians, Southeast Asia, and Southern Australia. So these are the global hotspots. And you see, in the bottom, the summary is that in 2018, about 2.3 billion people were living in countries under water stress, and 3.6 billion people faced inadequate access to water at least 1 month per year. So by 2050, the latter is expected to be more than 5 billion people. So if you have like about 7 to 9 billion people, we are thinking about a huge a regime shift, if you will, in this process that is being projected. So the question is then what we are doing about it. World Met Organization said, well, we need to invest in integrated resources management. We need to invest in end-to-end drought and flood early warning systems. We need to fill the capacity gap in collecting data. So these were there in purple, the recommendations for basic hydrological variables and improve the interaction among national level stakeholders. So these discussions have been going on for the last 2-3 decades in this space, especially since the climate change impacts have become more pronounced. But these are great recommendations, but World Met Organization report assumes that riparian countries in these transboundary river basins are willing to cooperate and coordinate their efforts. These recommendations ignore the imminent reality of water wars within and across riparian countries due to climate change. So this work that we have been doing as part of the Transboundary Watering Cooperation Network, in transboundary, for example, on the left-hand side, the Indus Basin stemming from the Tibetan Plateau here, and where the glaciers are being directly affected, but also water variability, like the shifts in the wetness and the dry regimes, and the shifts in the monsoons, shifts in the ENSO patterns, all of those are causing these effects. So this is like then the people in the downstream where there are like 5 rivers stemming, and a huge agricultural Indus irrigation system is being affected, but also hydropower and other effects of water scarcity are already being felt. And then, of course, the sea level is rising. So saltwater intrusion in the south is leading people in the lowlands to start migrating upwards. There are a lot of these tensions that we are already starting to see. And the Indus Basin Treaty is not necessarily equipped to tackle all of those challenges. We have published a lot about it, and still trying to understand what can be done about it. So on the right-hand side, we have like the Mekong Basin. You see the number of dams in the Mekong are just, it's just everywhere. They have like a lot of effects, and more dams are being built in the north, in the China. The Mekong River Commission is facing already fractures because of some of these tensions that are arising. And in the Amazon basin, a lot of the deforestation has already started to experience, like show drought. And most recently, integrated panel assessment, IPCC's 6th assessment report indicated that it's with medium confidence that the Amazon forest might become grassland if this pattern of deforestation continues, and the worst case climate change scenario ensues. So these are the hot spots here along the Andean mountains that were also indicated in the World Met Organization map. And then on the right-hand side in the Jordan River, which is like already a dry land and with climate change induced droughts, but as well as water scarcity and existing conflicts, how can, especially between Israel and Palestinians, of course, there are treaties between Israel and Jordan, but to what extent climate change is gonna, these treaties are resilient to the changes induced by climate change and other changes. So we've been working in this project on understanding these, the regime shifts that might happen from the climate change or ENSO, like La Nina, El Nino patterns on the glaciers of these highlands of these river systems, and how they would induce shifts in the hydroclimatic regimes, like whether they would become more wet, more they stay normal or dry. So these are the hydroclimatic regimes which kind of like determine whether you get floods or droughts in the end, depending on how you manage the land, the people who are using the water. So those could be the hydropower, irrigation, fishing, drinking, recreation, cultural, but it's also non-provisioning ecosystem services like watershed regulation, a regional climate that might emerge in, for example, in places like the lungs of our planet in Amazon system. So then how are these gonna induce shifts in like whether the people, farmers, energy producers, and households can meet their demand? What would be the impacts on the socioeconomic stability? And what can be done from the anticipatory governance of these, like if the governments, if the people anticipate this risk, what can be done? And that's an effort that we're trying to make as part of this project, is to pull together anticipatory governance, both not only at the transboundary governance level, like whether there is a cooperation or stalemate or conflict exists, but among the riparian countries, but also within the national countries, and understand like what we can do anticipating that risk in terms of anticipatory water governance at the riparian basin scale, as well as at the national scale. So the questions that we're looking in, like how do shifts in global climate change and so in governance policy regimes affect the dynamics of water availability in highlands and the distribution of both provisioning and non-provisioning ecosystem services. We're also interested in looking at which transboundary governance regimes and national, subnational water policies secure equitable distribution of water for both provisioning and non-provisioning ecosystem services under these different regimes. And can integrative modeling of these multi-scalar cascading regime shifts in transboundary river basins spanning highlands to oceans provide foresight? So that's where the anticipatory governance and foresight comes about designing cooperative and anticipatory solutions to these complex watershed management problems. So this project is being funded through like I'm as a Fulbright global scholar right now. I've started working with. I was recently in Ecuador and in Amazon system. Well, going to Israel and Jordan later this in the spring, and in Indus Basin next year. But we've been doing a lot of variety of projects. For example, in the Mekong River, one of our team members from NASA have already built integrated version of this model. We have built this integrated model for transboundary Lake Champlain Basin here under an NSF project, and we have started developing these integrated models that are coupled climate models, glacial models, hydrological models, and water budget models, and linking them with the social models that include the policies at the transboundary and the national level, and how the land use, land cover change is happening as a result of these very complex set of feedbacks. So what we call is like, this is like the Highlands to Ocean integrated regime shift assessment model that will be used by both transboundary, riparian, as well as national and subnational and community members as a way to understand the risk and anticipate and do something about it. So in that context, the Transboundary Watering Cooperation Network has been focused on this background research and more community-based action and public diplomacy and science diplomacy, and identifying the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring, water security, early warning, early action system. That's been our priority. That includes flood, drought, famine, water quality, and conflict early warnings, promoting scientist to scientist and community to community cooperation within and across transboundary river basins. And we've been also focused on integrating indigenous knowledge and wisdom with scientific knowledge to secure clean water. So in the, I'm going to skip this. In the Road to Geneva event for this science diplomacy part, as I mentioned earlier on, we had discussed these three questions. And we kind of like, next, Dr. Taikis is going to present the summary of the discussions from those Road to Geneva event, and some of the panelists who are present here today were part of the Road to Geneva event as well. But the three questions that we discussed were, what are the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring and water security, early warning, early action systems? And as I mentioned, like these include flood, drought, famine, water quality, and conflict early warnings. And then how can scientist to scientist cooperation be promoted within and across transboundary river basins? That's the second question. And how can indigenous knowledge and wisdom be integrated with scientific knowledge to secure clean water? So these are the three questions that we're going to discuss today as well, after the summary are presented. So we have circulated these questions to the panelists, and we'll also post these questions in the chat. And we will also like to have some time for the audience participation as well. So this is very interactive, very different set of panel compared to the standard panels that you would experience in this conference. So with that, I would request Dr. Taikis Taikis, are you there to present the summary from Road to Geneva event? And then I'll introduce the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Asim. Good morning, everyone, at least with my time. So let me share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, just put it in the presentation mode.
Yes. So in the next 10 minutes or so, we'll see like the recap of the science and diplomacy road to the Geneva event that took place last June with Environmental Peace Building Association and the Institute for Environmental Diplomacy and Security at the UVM that was organized, and the twin.
Taikis, people are not able to see your presentation. Sorry to intervene. Would you reconnect your presentation? I see in the chat that some people are not able to see your presentation.
It says that there is meeting is in focus mode. Only host and co-host can see your video.
I will fix that. Just give me one moment. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So thank you. Anna, can you fix this issue? I saw that happening yesterday as well.
Yep. Okay, it should be in the process of changing that setting. Sometimes it just takes a couple seconds. Okay,
Okay, so
thanks everyone.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Takis, please go ahead. Sorry for this interruption.
So I was saying, like, last June, Environmental Peacebuilding Association and the Institute of Environmental Diplomacy and Security at UVM and the Transboundary Watering Cooperation Network hosted a 3-day event, as you said, ASIM, about the Road to Geneva Symposium with 4 river basins as focal points, and mainly, as you mentioned, also Indus, Mekong, Amazon, and the Jordan. The first meeting focused on the citizens, community science, monitoring, and transboundary governance mechanisms, while the second 2-hour meeting that also led to this event that we're going to discuss today is evaluated the current capacity of the basin-wide integrated watershed management models to monitor and predict the hydroclimatic extreme events and regime shifts. And while the third and last one looked into identifying creative synergies and cooperative solutions for scaling up the implementation of science and environmental diplomacy. And all of these events are available online for those who would like to watch. They find the YouTube links at the Environmental Impacts website. So the second meeting of the Road to event had 3 overarching questions, as you also mentioned. ASIM was like mainly what are the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring and about the early warning and the action systems. How then we could promote cooperation between scientists, not only across boundaries, but also within a country. And the last of how local wisdom could be integrated with scientific knowledge to secure clean water. So regarding the first question, we say that data sharing between countries is not what it should be, and that creates hindrances in monitoring efforts, but also the creation of basin-wide early warning, early action systems, that's said by Senator Memon. So most of the early warning, early action systems are tied to national boundaries, and thus information is not communicated across the border. Another point, and this information could be crucial for the communities in the neighboring countries. Another point he made was that while we have the capacity to create elaborate early warning, early action systems using frontier technologies like, for example, high resolution remote sensing or AI algorithms to forecast these kind of events, there are still ground-looking constraints that needs to be tackled. Professor Sadek then underlined the importance of long-lasting scientific presence and research efforts where local communities should be fully engaged. Was another point that was made during the discussion of the first question, where Dr. Lipton emphasized on the need to create regional watershed standards and to unify the methodologies used among the sharing countries. So one country is not using a different methodology to examine something where the others use a different one. So it will be also useful that for synthesizing also the information that the countries are doing, that will be helpful. So he also noted that the different information access capabilities that the different communities have in the same watershed is also an important factor, especially for effective dissemination of early warning and action information to all in these watersheds. And last, Dr. Bowman suggested that the ability to examine the trade-off of model outputs and the different value systems should also be an available option for in this models. So moving on to the second question of the scientist, how to promote the scientist-to-scientist cooperation, it was underlined about having building teaching and training networks in these countries. So there will be an increased interaction between the scientists, but also basing forums and corridor science in conferences is also a very important aspect of having the scientists speaking with each other and promoting common research efforts. Sander Mengens emphasized in the need to eliminate the competition that exists between scientists, and also create these synergies for research in order to have like to be on the same page and have like a common effort. And Professor Mahanti was mentioning about building consortiums to enhance collaboration with giving examples of being a part of a consortium like that and with successful examples. But also he underlined the importance of having a mechanism in place in order to share the knowledge that needs between scientists and within countries. The last question that was discussed was about how the integration of local knowledge with the scientific knowledge, and a way that was put forward by Dr. Pacaro was to work directly with the communities to develop simple management plans and monitor what they need. Another key point was by Professor Friend of having like social innovation interventions, and so we have like communities leading and conducting their own research, so increasing also their voice in forums or with the government, local governments, or internationally, but and could also lead to change on the ground for these communities. And Professor Swatek also mentioned about an example about in Okavango Basin about two-way environmental education program that was a very successful example of exchange of indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge. But also he mentioned about this local input, this local wisdom disappears as we scale up. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. So wrapping up, we will watch a short clip about future challenges in Highlands Oceans Continuum. It is from the keynote presentation about the H2O initiative that Dr. Michael Glantz gave in the Road to Geneva second meeting. We have him today.
The volume is not clear.
But they're going to conflict. And I think we can avoid those conflicts now by playing the scenarios of what is actually starting to happen slowly and incrementally. People creeping up the upslope as the ecosystems do, and creeping downslope from the top.
And yeah, I don't know if the sound was okay, but yeah.
Maybe Mickey can reset this. But
yeah. We have him with us today. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and asking back to you.
Okay, great. Takis, thank you so much for this summary. This was an idea for us to give you a preview, but of course you can go back to the Environmental Peace Building Association YouTube channel, and maybe somebody can post a link to the Road to Geneva events here in the chat as well, and revisit those discussions in detail. As part of that, those events and the events in Impacts Geneva Conference, we are also, I just wanted to make this announcement, working on an edited volume about transboundary water diplomacy that will be kind of like we'll be doing invitations and for chapters call for chapters, hopefully during the end of the spring, summer semester. And there would be about few months for you to submit those. So that's that. There is that part of a set of activities that are also happening as part of this initiative. So with that, I would go to the panel and start the introductions of the panel and the questions, 3 questions that we'll be discussing in the panel. We have already been kind of like extensive discussions will be taking place, but we'll be invited these panelists to have present some more summative arguments about these issues. So the first panelist is going to be Professor Michael Glantz. He's a political scientist in the early 1970s. Glantz shifted his research from wars of national liberation to understanding climate's impacts on society and society's impacts on climate. So while at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, he headed the Environmental and Societal Impacts Group. He was its only senior social scientist in its 50-year history. In 2008, he then moved to the University of Colorado as director of the Consortium for Capacity Building. During his 50 years studying climate-related issues, he has had the opportunity to lecture at several universities and UN agencies, as well as a conference participant to scores of international and national conferences concerned with climate, water, and weather issues. He has written and edited a total of 30 plus published books, and many articles are on the linkages between climate, water, weather, and society. He has organized numerous international workshops on climate, water, and weather issues, including various creeping environmental problems in Central Asia, East and Southeast, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South America. He's written extensively about desertification, fisheries, El Nino, La Nina, droughts and floods, early warning systems, and disaster risk reduction. And it goes on and on. I just wanted to kind of like present this in detail. It's a great pleasure to have Mickey, and he had to wake up at 4 a.m. to join us from Boulder, Colorado. So Mickey, really appreciate this. It's a great pleasure to have it here. So, and then from the Jordan River, we have Clive Lipton. Dr. Clive Lipton was also in our panel yesterday. Great, Clive, thank you so much for joining from Israel. He serves as the director of the Center for Transboundary Water Management at the Arba Institute. He oversees projects focused on transboundary water and environmental problems facing Israel, Jordan, and Palestine. And his specialty is in water resources management and policy. Clive, please turn on your screen when I'm introducing so that people can see you. Thank you. Clive has conducted research for a number of international agencies such as the World Bank, UNDP, and USAID, and has been involved most recently with the European Union's Water Initiative. And he's actually also host of my Fulbright trip. So I'll be visiting with him for a couple of months starting in the middle of March. Suleiman, I am not sure, is Suleiman around? He was with us yesterday. Okay, so then moving on to the Amazon Basin, we have 2 representatives, Professor Maria del Pilar Conejo Rodriguez, who just hosted me actually in Ecuador. And she's the professor at Espol Polytechnics University, where she's the director of the Pacific International Center for Disaster Risk Reduction. I also want to mention that Pilar has also served as National Secretary of Disaster Risk Agency Ministry for 6 years in Ecuador. She's been teaching aquaculture for over 34 years and worked with climate impacts upon socioeconomic sectors in the humid tropics of Americas, integrated water management, environmental sustainability, and disaster risk reduction. I'm also pleased to have Sandra Megans, who's a PhD candidate at Wageningen University, and has been working with Pilar and others over 20 years experience of water and social ecological systems. She's interested in the connection between science and policy, especially in relation to the challenges of water scarcity and drought, dealing with complexities and uncertainties of common water governance. And just to clarify, I think Pilar and Sandra made a deal. So Pilar was answering questions in yesterday's roundtable, and Sandra are going to be on the hook today. Then we have Mekong, from Mekong. I'm really pleased to announce Tirapong Pumun. He was also with us yesterday. And Tirapong, thank you so much for joining all the way from Thailand. He's director of Mekong Community Institute and Living River Association, an environmental NGO based in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Is over 30 years of experience in environmental conservation. His work deals with supporting local communities' rights to their water resources and promoting local knowledge-based sustainable water resource management. I'm also pleased to announce the presence of Julie Clausen. Julie, would you please turn on your, okay, there we go. Thank you. She's one of the founding partners of the Fisheries Conservation Foundation, exploring new methods for fisheries outreach and education and ways to engage with the natural resource constituents. Now she serves as Director of Operations, where she's been worked on projects both in the US and abroad in the Bahamas, Canada, Bhutan, and Mexico, making strides to further fisheries conservation efforts. Julie, thank you so much for joining in our panel today. I don't see Chen Ye from China. I think maybe he's busy watching Winter Olympics. He's not able to join us, but Chen Ye, I was hoping to be on this panel because China is like really upper riparian partner in both Indus and Mekong. So having Chinese perspective is critical. But I know Mickey has also worked a lot in China, so maybe he can cover that perspective. Focusing on the Indus River Basin, I'm really pleased to announce Professor Ashutosh Mahanti from India. Ashutosh, I think you are there, so yes. He is an international researcher, professor, mentor, and practitioner, and have 19 years of academic and professional experience in more than 15 countries. He's serving as Dean and Professor of Research and International Cooperation of the Center of Excellence in Disaster Management and Environment at Madhyanchal Professional University. Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Great to have you here. And then we have Saeed Khan. He's been working with me on a Green Climate Fund project, looking at like using Sentinel data to measure the glacial change and glacial lake outburst flooding vulnerabilities in the upper Indus Basin. Saeed is a PhD student of geomorphology at the University of Beirut. His research interest lies in exploring climate change and human migration nexus in the mountain communities of the Eastern Hindu Kush region and how it is linked to climate change in the wider socioeconomic and political context of the northern Pakistan. From the Twin Secretariat, I'm pleased to announce Susan Sagarbedi. She was also chairing and moderating the session yesterday. She's the director of the Center for Advancement of Public Action at Bennington College, as well as a co-founder of Twin, and she's been engaging with these questions with us, and we've been puzzling over it for a long time now. So it's really exciting to have the panel here discuss it, but they might have some insights as well. Bindu Panikkar is an assistant professor at the University of Vermont and also associate director of Institute for Environmental Diplomacy. She's working at the intersection of the emerging fields of environmental justice, environmental health, and science, technology, and society studies. I'm also thankful to the Twin Secretariat help from Ben Ryan, who was a panelist in Data Summary yesterday. He's a PhD student in Sustainable Development Policy, Economics, and Governance, and working with our team here. Dr. Taikis, you just presented a summary. He's a postdoctoral associate working here, as well as his current research focuses on basin resilience to extreme events. He's been also working with me on Highlands to Oceans integrated model development. Dr. Caitlin Waddick is also another member of our team. She's has a PhD in environmental planning from Georgia Institute of Technology on issues of integrating urban planning with public health. And she's currently also appointed as Twin Research Fellow at the Bennington College and working with Susan and our team to have day-to-day operational strategic guidance for the Twin program. So with that introductions, I'm ready to jump into these. And while we're doing it, and in yesterday's meeting, I noticed that there was a lot of discussion on the chat as well. So please feel free to use the chat and we'll try to keep getting back to the chat. So I will start this first question I'll start with the Clive. You wanna start with the Jordan River Basin? So the three questions that we have posed. The first question is about what are the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring and water security, early warning, early action systems, flood, drought, famine, water quality. So just in the order, like Clive, we'll start with the Jordan River, then we'll go to the Amazon, Mekong, and Indus, and then I'll have Mickey provide an overview on this first part. Okay, so Clive, please go ahead.
Thank you, Asim, and great to be speaking again at the conference in our second session today. So in terms of question one, what are the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring? In terms of the watershed that I work in, the Jordan River Basin, firstly, for those unfamiliar, the Jordan River system is the most important source of fresh surface water for Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, but it also includes the upstream nations of Syria and Lebanon. It's one of the most contentious water basins in the world due to the Israeli-Palestinian and Israeli-Arab conflict. And what this means from a transboundary water management perspective is that there is real difficulties in putting together an overall comprehensive watershed approach to managing the system. The system is under heavy hydrological stress due to drought and climate change, but also due to over extraction of the system, and it's because of that it's highly ecologically degraded. So, for example, there is hardly any water flowing in the Jordan River system, the Jordan River itself, connecting the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. And this is causing major ecological and also economic problems with respect to a declining Dead Sea basin. But to get to the heart of the question, the gaps in monitoring the system is firstly at the political level, right? So at the track one, government to government level, there is an agreement, a peace treaty between Israel and Jordan, a bilateral agreement, which does include a lot of issues with respect to water allocations between the countries with respect to the Jordan system. There are agreements with the Palestinians, but because there is no treaty there, these are agreements that are not anchored in a broader government-to-government situation, and it therefore means the agreement is oftentimes not implemented due to disagreements and misunderstandings between the parties. And of course, there are no track one relations with Israel and Syria and Lebanon. So politically, this is it's a real challenge in developing a comprehensive approach to managing the system. And so lots of gaps occur. For example, how do we assess what should be considered to be the base flow for ecological functioning of the Jordan River system? So, for example, environmental flows is an issue that is critical for the ecological health of the system, but it's something that requires cooperation amongst all the parties to figure out how much water should be in the river, and of course, where is that water going to come from? The system, as I briefly said, is already heavily over-extracted, and the only way fresh water can be brought back into the system is if there are agreements amongst the parties to make that happen. But that is unlikely to happen because of the issue of growing populations and water scarcity. And so the question in the basin specifically is, if we're thinking about the best way to monitor the system and to develop things like early warning, security, action systems, and so on, fresh water is unlikely to be brought back to the system. And so there is an interesting aspect to thinking about non-conventional water resources into the basin. And this is most likely going to come from treated wastewater. And there has been a lot of work done around the world on using treated wastewater as an environmental flow. There's many examples. And so one aspect that I'm working on is, how do you think about alternative sources of water for ecological rehabilitation, which is not going to be fresh water. One of the most contentious gaps in monitoring is actually between the Israelis and the Palestinians on the issue of flow. Why is this important? Because if you are able to determine how much water is being discharged into the system, you can also figure out how much water is being used. And this then would lead to firstly figuring out what the allocations are between the parties, but also developing an economic model of who's paying for the water. Because there are huge disagreements on water rights and sovereignty between Israelis and Palestinians, the issue of flow, actually putting in flow monitors, is hugely problematic, because neither party actually wants to an accurate assessment of the flow, because that will open up huge issues in terms of allocations and sovereignty and rights and all the other very problematic issues, because we don't have an overarching treaty within which these issues are agreed upon. So flow monitoring, which is essential, is not happening. There's a lot of resistance to actually putting flow meters in, even though it's clear that this should take place. And the other gap is on the water quality side, in terms of understanding, for example, sewage discharges due to lack of sewage treatment. This is, again, a big problem in the West Bank. Again, there is very little joint efforts to put these kinds of monitoring systems in. Even though there are mechanisms to do it, it's not happening, mostly because of political disagreements. So to end off, what we are promoting and advocating in our work at the ROI Institute is how do you actually bring these kinds of sensors and monitoring technologies online through a track 2 or even a track 3, which will bring us to questions 2 and 3 later on in the panel. So we are looking to see how we can work below the political radar, so to speak, to gather this data and to put it into the hands of the people that need it most. So I think I'll stop at that point and can elaborate on some of those other points when we get to question 2 and question 3.
Yeah, that's great. Really comprehensive treatment of this. And thank you so much for bringing out all these details, because that really sets us to hear, from the Amazon system. So I think, Sandra, you want to take it, and then Pilar, you can add in if you feel like you want to supplement Sandra's response. So Sandra, please, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And always I'm happy to hear from Clive's experience in the Jordan. We are not in the same position to have this high rate of experience with monitoring. And I'm also not an Amazon expert, because the Amazon, I just recently read from some other scholars that it's impossible to really research all the region. So I think I'm going to start from that point. The relation of the Amazon people with the rivers is different than seen in other shared basins in South America. And the main issue is because we are sharing borders with so many countries, with so many different legislations and sovereignty, and with so different capacities also. So even if we agree that early warning system helps to reduce economic loss and mitigate the numbers of injury as death from a disaster, early warning information empowers people to act, but it's not the same sharing in every country that belongs to the Amazon. So this is one of the main points that we have to take in consideration when we are talking about gaps. Something that brings to my memories with our conference and exchange information is the transboundary countries in the Amazons, and also different in sharing information. That is also due to political reasons, and most of the time is due to security reasons. So what this means that we have to put in consideration that even if the early warning system is placed in some of the country with high technology or more information than the others, it has to be some limitations at the moment to share the information with other countries as well. So the first point is where the gaps in early warning system is because it's related with the national objective. What is the legal commitment that the countries can have to share this information? So the lack of sufficient funding is also a main issue, because not all the countries, in the case of Ecuador, is having the supporting to develop high quality collecting data in the region. So we cannot produce the models that we need, even to share these outcomes with the neighbors country. So maybe this is one of the starting point for the gaps, that why early warning system is related from to whom, with whom, and what is the real objective and the real needs of this early warning system in such a very complex area.
Thank you, Sandra. Pilar, you want to add anything before we move on to the Mekong Basin?
Just one small comment is that there are efforts that are written on paper, like the strategic plan for the Amazon Treaty. They were designed in 2018, and they're having some calls, but the early warning systems are kind of fragmented, like for different river basins that are tributary to the Amazon. So this integration, I think is very far away in terms of things that can go down to the people, because on the big picture, you can have, the satellite information and very broad scale of what's going on. We get the pictures of the rainfall coming in and some issues about it, but that's it.
Right. So there's need to like build in more value added information and communicate it to the stakeholders to understand like what they can do about it. Like that's the early action part. What Mickey calls like end-to-end kind of like systems. So that's really, thank you so much, Pilar. So let's move to the Mekong River Basin. And I think Tirapong, you wanna talk about this first question that we've been posing about the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring and water security early warning, early action systems. That's very broadly defined. Thank you.
Good evening from Thailand. I think the main gap is that we don't have the effective platform to share information or warning that the platform that is accessible and acceptable by different group of people in the Mekong. As you may know that there are many countries and different group of people. Some of the example is about the no effective warning system about the disaster or the change of the Mekong water level in the Mekong. As you may know that the Mekong level is changed. It takes about 3 to 4 months to reach the highest or the lowest point. But now the Mekong change every day. Fluctuation is the main problem because of the water release from dam in China. So we need the system to warn that the water when it change, when it's gonna move to the next community or the next province. But we don't have this system. And it have to be accessible by local community to not just the government. And another problem is that China in upstream don't want to share information, and we request us many times, but it's not work. And because of the politics of water in the Mekong country, some facts are not accepted. Just at some research point out that the Mekong Dam in China is the main cause of flood in drought. But the Chinese government may say that, oh no, it's not because of dam, but because of climate change. We don't have the clear evidence that is this true or because of climate change or dam. And in the opposite way, Chinese government may say that dam in China is the solution for climate change. They have the same problem. The dam is help the downstream community, downstream country. So yeah, the platform, effective platform is important. Thank you.
Tirapong, thank you so much for bringing out this very, very important point and pronounced the transboundary challenges between China and the rest of the downstream countries in the Mekong system. And Julie, please, would you add to this? I know you're going to go to the water quality and fisheries part of it, but please, I know that monitoring is also needed. So please.
Yes, exactly. I think, adding on it is an extension of water quality is really looking at biological indicators and the failure. If we're going to have freshwater ecosystems that are resilient, we have to pay attention to those biological factors. So, the benthic community can be a great indicator of water health. That the amount of invasive species in a system, those are all, great indicators for the health of a system. One problem is that there is a lot of data being collected, but it just doesn't work its way up the chain into any sort of political information. And I will say that another indicator is just looking at, the socio-economic situation of migration. So once the fisheries begin to fail and fishers can't make a living anymore, they begin to migrate out of the system. And, that's another indicator that things are failing on the biological level. And just a note about standardization of data. One of the huge issues with fisheries or biological data is just the lack of on the ground community data, how much reliance there is on fisheries. And so this standardization is really important. I was involved with the International Finance Corporation project in Nepal in trying to get a handle on just basic standardization of data, and this this will help move that issue. Okay, that's it.
That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, this is very, very important, like water quality and standardization. I mean, I think Clive has also brought this issue multiple times. You've been like engaged in some kind of like a river basin scale kind of like standardization, because we can't have, it's very difficult to have global standards. We need to have like some kind of like context specific, basin wide, river scale, context specific kind of like parameters. So that's really great point. Okay, so let's move to the Indus Basin, and Ashutosh, floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I saw that there are a lot of issues and challenges they have mentioned. But yesterday I also spoke on this basis of this various issues in the Indus Basin, because we have been working last 15 years on the. So in my point of view, there is gaps like information sharing there because of the inflow water that from the Tibetan that starting point from the Indus Basin, from to India, then to Pakistan, the information of the database that is not shared properly, and it is one of the reasons. Another thing is water governance, that is also lacking. That is the another perspective we can see in the future research, how that could be shared, how the water could be shared. There is a lot of things we are doing, like we are doing sort of a lot of modeling actually in the whole river basin, that Indian part, even starting from the Chinese to India, then India to Pakistan to then Afghanistan. So all the way we have to have seen what are the major thrusts, because all our livelihood, agriculture, everything dependent on the water. So that water that inflow from all the waterways from the Indus, we have to have some kind of database and information that we have to have to monitor, and properly we can address like this. Say the information should be shared to the community level, even the country level, even the political. There is consciousness among the countries, so that it will be properly addressed. So that is the one various gaps I can see, because other things already Clive has informed. Equally, we can also similar way we can thought about the water regime of this whole on the transboundary from the Indus Basin perspective. So it is in my perspective, the 2-3 gaps are water governance. Then second is the data sharing between the country in the all riparian India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. So that's my perspective on that.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh, for very concise response and building off of the discussion. So I think let's have Mickey. Kind of like Mickey has been working on all of these basins and many more over the last 5 decades. So Mickey, I think you've like really also worked with World Met Organization and all of these, most recently El Niño Ready Nations, and I can imagine you have a very global perspective, but I'm very keen to hear your perspective, like overall.
Okay. Yes, we all have done research in lots of ways and at lots of levels, from global to local. And I've got some kind of a bit broader observation and a new idea, actually, that came out of this just now. But we keep talking about monitoring. We don't have information. Governments don't like to share information. And, if you want it and you neglected that information in the past in your country and somebody wants it, now you don't want to give it. Before it was okay, now it's not okay. If somebody wants it, must have value. So that's a major stumbling block. And then they put it under the label of national security, when it isn't more than just politics. So I wanted to mention a few things. Okay, I'll try to keep it short, mention points, we can always talk about them. Decision-making under uncertainty, DMUU. Okay, that's what we fall back to. Oh, we have so many decisions, but we have no information. No, we have information. And I refer to it as decision-making, DMUF, decision-making under foreseeability. When a policymaker has to make a decision today, it doesn't have 100%. It has to use best judgment and all that stuff. So they make a decision. So I think foreseeability is like this foresight stuff and anticipatory. So I think we have to kind of accept that DMUU exists, and we're not going to crack that walnut very easily. Another is the idea for H2O originally started when I was working in mountain stuff in Central Asia. And I got the idea to kind of bring people together with the idea that climate change is going to warm at both ends of the basin, the coastal end and the higher altitudes. And what's going to happen is it's going to get warmer. People are going to start to shift downward to keep, for meadows and keep their livestock going and all that year round. People at the coast are going to move up because they need more water, they need more, and they have money. And the money is investment. And they just, I'll do farming in the mid-reaches. The point was that I can see this invisible boundary somewhere in the middle reaches where these two forces are going to come together. And there's conflict there. In a couple decades, a decade, 3 decades, let's do what you're doing now with the twinning and get these groups talking about these issues and sorting it out. Okay, so you know that. The other is our decision-making processes can't keep up with the environmental changes, natural ones and the ones we're making. Every time we take a little more water out of the Colorado River system, someone downstream has trouble. So there is this creeping, I call them creeping environmental problems, which is hard to translate in some languages. But anyway, it's a slow onset, hardly noticeable. But at the end of the day, or the end of the century, or the end of the month, you see a difference. It's like almost every environmental problem that humans are involved in is a creeping problem. And bureaucracies can't keep pace. By the time they find it's crossed the threshold where it's a crisis, it's late. So you have to talk about it in advance. You know where you're going, you will get there. Okay, so do something now or wait for the next administration to take care of it. I could use the hour, but I won't. Here's the deal. One thing I noticed here is that that twinning needs a twin, or within the twins, there's another twin. And the twin is this. I came up with H2O. I got the idea from a river basin in New Jersey, a small one basin in one state. Relatively easy, but not so. I came up with, there's an O2H, actually, and there is a chemical thing, O2H. I looked it up. But what came to me reading all this stuff is that there's an ocean to highlands. When you talk highlands to oceans, the mountaintops are important, the glaciers are important, blah, blah, blah. When you go to the ocean to highlands, they have their own set of problems, their own perspectives, their own needs. So I think you need an O2H. And it's a subset, okay, that they overlap clearly, but that's another direction, which brings in the ocean. A long time ago, when I started working on El Nino in Peru, it said Peru was 3 parts. It was tropical, mountain, and coastal. Yet a third of their GDP was coming out of the ocean, the fisheries. It really should have been a 4th part. Anyway, so that's just some ramblings of, any one of us could ramble. We all have this information. Okay.
Vicky, thank you. No, I mean, these are very insightful, and I would say like the emphasis on foresight and foreseeability, and also thinking about O2H. I think that's exactly the kind of discussion that we want to have. It's like the point of the discussion here is to have emergent discussion and not just have like something that's all structured and prepared. I mean, that's why we are together here, right? So thank you so much for bringing out these. I think it's time to move on to the next. Before we do, like I wanted to say that I forgot to introduce Stefan Gayan from Twin Secretariat. He's been also very busy in the chat. He's a PhD student who's also helping us along with Ben in organizing this event. So Stefan, you can, thank you so much for your efforts here. Okay, so let's, these points have been made. Let's, all of them are kind of like set the stage. Well, we need to have scientist to scientist cooperation in these transboundary river basins. Like if the data is being collected in different ways from different standards, how do we integrate that? How do we work together in like building these models that are transboundary, highlands to oceans or oceans to highlands, if you will, that could like get it like be integrated in a sense, and not just focus on water quantity, but also water quality, but all kinds of these other dynamics of climate change, for example, like how climate change induced precipitation variability that, for example, Tirapong mentioned, or droughts in Amazon or in Jordan Basin, and the variability issues that came out in the Indus Basin as well. So the question here is that we need to have scientist to scientist cooperation. Like some people have been saying that, well, we have the satellite data now, so we don't need to collect data at the basin level, at the field level. That's not correct. We need to have validation of the satellite data through the data sets at the stream level for validating hydrological models. We need to have basic socio-demographic data to build these integrated models to understand what is the value of the water, as Clive brought out. Who is demanding the water? What is the conflict in terms of the allocation of water between farmers, energy producers, and so forth? So these are this both from the social and climatological side, and hydrological side. We need to have data and scientist cooperation. So the question is then, well, how can we? The second question that we have posed, and we've been discussing this, how can scientist to scientist cooperation be promoted within and across transboundary river basins? So this is at the core of the science diplomacy work that we've been engaged in the last 2 decades. I will say, at least in the Indus Basin. Mickey Glantz sent me in 2005 there to organize an Indus Basin meeting in South Asia that was Climate and Society Affairs when I was a postdoc at National Center for Atmospheric Research. I mean, at least the history is there, and we are still not there in terms of having an effective agreement, despite the existence of Indus Basin Treaty. So with that, like, how about we start with Ashutosh, you are on the hook. So we need an Indus Basin data treaty. So what's going on? Well, how can we promote scientist to scientist cooperation? And I know you talked about it as well. So you want to take it on? You're muted.
Okay, so we have a mechanism, like we have started a program called HUC program, Himalaya University Consortium, where we have 8 countries partners, and we have shared the information among the scientists, and we are giving some scholarship to the Pakistan students and Afghanistan students, Indian students, and Nepal students. So there is a very big collaboration among the students within the HUC program. So now it has an planning to revive again with the World Bank support, and there is a possibility of the other institute, like I'm leading the Indian part, although I am also associated few years back with the Beijing Normal University. I work as a visiting faculty. So we have some mechanism to sharing the information and knowledge and our research outcome from that. Our research, there are a number of like 10 to 12 PhD scholars working with us from all across the basins and river basins. So we are sharing the information on the various modeling, and we are working on various how the future perspective on the clean water and safe water provision would be provided, because there are the population has been bigger challenges in this whole region because very densely populated. Another is our information that we have been sharing the all communities. That is not that sufficient. There are a lot of things we have to share among the all scientific communities, because if we see like how the inflow water coming, and then when there is some kind of flood, there is some kind of, because we see every year there is more than 4 to 5 GLAP, and there is also possibility of the flash floods and many more events in the glacier challenges. So we have to have some mechanism to share our information, the academia, the researcher, so that our future could be more secured, and we can provide the clean and safe water for the future. So there is a very larger interest. We have to have a conscience among the countries, among the academia, for the researcher. So there is also, I find there is a lot of indigenous knowledge from all along the riparian countries, from Afghanistan. I saw there are a lot of things we can learn from from their own knowledge, how the watershed they're managing in the decades. They have no scientific knowledge, but now it is a integration of both scientific as well as indigenous knowledge. So it is more effective, and it is for all season they can use the water. So we have to have some kind of combination of all research that has been conducting, and our researchers are doing very well, because I saw there are a lot of researchers from Pakistan, from AIT, because I have working with AIT. So we have to have some mechanism to have sharing, database knowledge, even some research paper among the all European, scientists, so that the future we could have more, good research and our water resource problem could be resolved. That's
okay. Ashutosh, thank you so much. I mean, one of the challenges that we have faced is, like, say, if you want to deploy water quality sensors, we need to have, of course, there are community science, citizen science programs, but governments also need to give the permits for like deploying those sensors. So of course, that data sharing of the existing data, that is great. But say if we want to collect as a research project our own like water quality sensors or train the citizen scientists, do you think like those barriers have been removed in countries like India? And I can imagine like in China, that's also a challenge, in Afghanistan too. So I mean, and Pakistan, I mean, you need to get the permits, right? So that British colonial history. Yeah. So is that something that they would be open to in terms of giving the permits?
Of course, like there are still, stigmas, like we have, the government is not fully open for this perspective. Also, we are the scientific academia community from the river basins, like we are very near in Himalaya, like Hindu Kush Himalaya, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. So we see, like, if we, the scientific communities having some kind of, scope, because we have some scope to share the information, but there are a lot of challenges, in fact, I can say, to share without permission, and because there are a lot of GIS-based information that we could not share without government approval. And that we are working with our, young research scholars and scientists that among all countries, all India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, right. Because in 3 countries I worked. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, I just wanted to bring out that challenge that we faced in the actual work in the field. And so let's move to the Jordan system. Clive, you wanna, I mean, of course, you've been working with the sensor deployments as well, but I just want to hear your perspective. Like, what do you think about the data sharing between Jordanians, Israelis, but also Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine?
Thanks, Asim. Yeah, so I think basically you made the point already that it's all good for scientists to want to work together, but they don't work in a vacuum, right? So there's a lot of scientific cooperation between Israelis and Palestinians and Jordanians. Actually, there's a USAID funding mechanism that we've actually benefited from, which is called the Middle East Regional Cooperation Program, which was actually set up specifically to promote scientific collaboration between Israel and her Arab neighbors. And we've been able to benefit from this program to do cross-border water management work. Part of that being, trying to put these kinds of sensors in place across the border so that we can get a more unified, more watershed-based assessment of both quantity and quality. There's also opportunity to do similar work through the European Union, for example, as well. But I think the issue is that there is good collaboration on the scientific level, on the technical level, but none of that, again, can really go beyond, well, let's say the frustration that we have in our work is that we do good science and we do it collaboratively and we do it transparently, but where does the science go, right? It's all good that we do our work and we get it published and so on, but at the end of the day, it has to get into the hands of the policymakers because they're the ones making the decisions. And that's where, of course, we hit the stumbling blocks and the obstacles, whether it just be pure bureaucracy, inertia. But a big problem, at least in our basin, is just there's mistrust. There's data. One way that I've seen this over the years, and I've experienced it myself, is data is power. And those that have the data have the power, and it was mentioned earlier in the session, they don't want to share that data because they're sharing their power. And this is a big problem, specifically with respect to Israelis and Palestinians because of the conflict. And also because there's an imbalance in abilities and capacities. Israel has very well established systems and technologies in place for water monitoring, the Palestinians less so. So there's also just a built-in inequality in the abilities of the sides to work together because the capacities are different. So these are some of the obstacles, and one of the real tragedies of this lack of collaboration promoted at the political level is we come back to a very degraded system, because even though the scientists have the knowledge, that knowledge is not being effectively put into practice to improve the ecological functioning of the system. For example, one of the big problems we have is groundwater monitoring, not just surface water. Groundwater is probably more important for us as a source of water than fresh water. Everybody knows that the groundwater is being over extracted. We have increasing salinity because of that, but there's no system in place to manage appropriately pumping. So what this creates is, especially in the West Bank where there's real water scarcity, is unlicensed and unregulated pumping. And this means that the governments just don't know who's pumping and where it's being pumping and whether pumping is taking place. And at the end of the day, everybody is being impacted by this because there isn't an overarching system in place to do this kind of thing at a regional cooperative level. So I think that the issue is that at least in the Jordan River system, when we think about question 2, there is a lot of scientific collaboration that's been going on for years, but it doesn't really get us very far when we are only operating at the scientific level. I think that's probably my main point. And for one final comment, work with Lebanon and Syria. So for example, under the USAID program, the Middle East Regional Cooperation, there isn't any barriers for Lebanese scientists and Syrian scientists to work with Israelis, but of course that can't happen because there isn't the ability for those scientists to work openly with their Israeli colleagues. So even though there is the opportunity to do it and there's funding that can be applied for, it's not going to happen until there is some kind of a political process to make that happen. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, however much we are able to work at a certain collegial, professional way, jointly, it doesn't really get us very far if we're not also able to break through some of the political deadlocks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clive. I think like this builds off of what we were talking about in the Indus Basin, but like now let's move to the Mekong Basin, and just as Tirapong earlier on said, like they don't know when the Chinese are going to release the water from the dams from the highlands, and then the downstream countries cannot really use the information. They don't have the information, so they're like able to not predict the water flows in the southern rivers in Mekong Basin. And so my question to like Tirapong and Julie is about and the need for like biological water quality monitoring data, right? So these are big gaps that exist in the data sharing or data generation in the Mekong system. And on the one hand, like Mekong River Commission was kind of like touted in the water diplomacy world as an example of a successful example of like that was working. But more recently, there have been some fractures, and some of those pertain to this data sharing between Chinese and the lower riparians in the Mekong system. So, having set this context, would you please elaborate? So, Tirapong, you go first, and then Julie can come in.
Yeah, it's a lot of gap about the knowledge, and we need more the data to support to solve the problem. Yeah, the Mekong River Commission just start to work to cooperate with China, Lansang Mekong Corporation, but we don't know that how it's gonna be and how much they're gonna share. Is there any hidden agenda or the politics? I believe that it's not gonna be easy, and there may be some political or hidden agenda behind the cooperation or sharing information is not going to be 100% or clear to get information. I think beside that, I think we need the research or the data that we need the integration of different of the environmental side and social side. We need to develop more research model, especially transformative research or co-production research. I think this is important.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is very, very important point about co-production of knowledge that we also discussed yesterday. So Julie, please.
Yeah, just I would just emphasize what Clive said is that, there are some actually really good science networks in the Mekong and in the basin, but where does that science go? Where does that cooperation go? How do you get that into the hands of people that either need it or need to hear it? So that, that link is something to fix. I think there are some really good examples in other parts of the world where scientific networks have really been able to push some of these things. And I was just going to comment on other paths to make a difference with the science is just through the hydropower funders. If you can really reach out and make some headway with World Bank and IFC on listening to the science and really looking at it a sense of reality. I think some scientific consortiums can make a lot of headway there. They're starting to pay attention. They're paying attention, to these environmental disasters, but there's still a lot of empty promises going on. So.
Julie, great. Thank you so much. I mean, so this idea of scientific consortium, that's why we're like trying to put in the twin this science diplomacy and build this consortium maybe that might be aligned with these broader discussions that you pointed out. So let's move to the Amazon system. I think, Sandra, you want to go, and Pilar, like very quickly about this science to science cooperation and the data sharing issues.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to take the last comment from Julie. And just to quote something about the government from in general, they are putting the cart before the horse. That they usually, we know that expression. The government put the cart before the horse by investing heavily before making major reforms in understanding the transboundary cooperation scenarios. What it means. The academic community, especially in our countries, they face some challenges to connect with the government scales. And that brings a lot of problems because without proper funding, there are no science and there are no results that can be shared among the countries. But this is another question that yesterday I was reflecting about what we have been done here or through the literature. How we define the Amazon research scientists and the Amazon scientists to do what. So in that order, I think what we are doing together or the cooperation between the university, the Wageningen or the SPOL, in this case, the Center for Disaster Risk Reduction, we dare to research in another domains than the traditional ones because we learn that some of the interesting research that we are doing in another part of the country, we can extrapolate and we can use it in order to find some of the questions and to provide some solution and suggestion to our governments. So I think that is a very new approach that brings a lot of challenge for us, the scientific group that is very limited in our country, and trying not to fragmenting about issues, but about what in reality the agenda needs in the country about the Amazon in general, because we are sharing the same issues in most of the country, even it's in the coast or it's in the Amazon or it's in the Highlands. So I think it's Pilar can support a little more my comments with some of the new results that the center has been done regarding to this issue.
Thank you much, Sandra. Prahlad?
Well, some of the things are also our responsibility as academia, you know, like, for example, it's easy for us to have a graduate student, you know, guide this graduate student and so on. What is difficult is, for example, for all of us to agree on having one of our courses in our universities being common to everybody. So all of them know different realities. We have done this in Ecuador. It's not easy. We have 3 universities working together for a master program in integrated water resource management from the northern part of the country, in which the Andes are different than from the southern part towards the Amazonian and the coastal. Because we found out that even in such a small country like Ecuador, if somebody studied only in the coast, they didn't know what was happening in the other part of the country. So the thing is here with the whole group that is here, no? For example, the twin group, we share common experiences and all of us make an effort to speak English. So there is something that we have to take advantage of. So maybe in the not so near future, but with the pandemic, e-learning has become a reachable tool. We could share, you know, like one course that we have it for all, maybe a MOOC or maybe something. This will foster collaboration because then we know, oh, we have the same problem. They have resolved it in this way, or we have this other problem. And the other thing is that when we have these legal frameworks from the governments, I mean, the governments change every 5 or 4 years. We don't. We stay for long periods in academia. So why not look at what they have planned and say to them, okay, we're going to take this part of your plan and we're going to support you and work on it. I know it takes a lot of lobbying time to do so, but I think it's worth it to make the effort.
Pilar, this is a great point, and we will definitely follow through about this. And we've been talking about these online trainings and course offerings and certificate programs and so forth. So we'll definitely, that's a great idea. We'll follow through on that. So Mickey, science to science cooperation. I mean, I was, like that's what I got my initial science diplomacy training from, with the work learning from you, but I'm just very curious to hear what you want to say about this. I remember those disaster diplomacy days. And you're muted.
Maybe it's better if I'm muted. No, the science to science thing, I've worked with physical scientists. It's not an easy task. If you look at early warning systems, for example, which are important, I've been lately focusing on the gap between the physical science production of a forecast and the societal reception of the forecast, thanking the physical scientists for being so kind to give them some lead time. However, early warning requires 2 things. Science is limited. They're not going to give you a perfect forecast of an El Nino or whatever, okay? Just forget that, at least not in my lifetime or anyone's we're talking right now. But there is a good opportunity to project out. And my feeling is that we've got to, we have a lot of information. We already know things. The gap part is that it should be more integrated. It's not physical science. They're doing the best they can to produce a forecast to give you as much gap time. And society gets early warning, they get the early warning managers get it and they move with it. But the gap is too big. The gap can be shortened from the societal end. If everyone talks about early warning system as a chain of links, monitoring, analysis, etc. So I have a feeling we have to work on that. And that involves multidisciplinary, which is still a kind of a punished word, which I happen to believe in, having been an engineer and now a social scientist. Yes, I don't need to make everyone an engineer, but they can understand some of the things I do, and I can understand what they do. So multidisciplinary is really important, and that's just one more divisive thing that we have to cope with.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is really, really critical, that the gap that exists between social and natural scientists, and the challenges of like transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary work that we face in this integrated approaches, right? So that's really very, very important point. Just we have, I don't think we have time to go into the third question, but I saw that Larry Savatuk has posted some interesting comments about like the availability of satellite data and all these other data sets. And Larry, like, would you please say a little bit more about, because we've been like, for the early warning systems, we need validation data, that for validation for social scientists and natural science data, hydrological data, but satellite data is available, but still it has some gaps in terms of its credibility. So would you say a little bit more about?
Sure. I don't know that. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I'm in the middle of a snowstorm here, so it's a different kind of water management that I'm dealing with. I'm just reflecting on something that Hoopsav and I highlighted now going back about a decade, where at the 50th anniversary of the IHE, he presented this paper showing, and where he made this bold declaration that given the innovations in Earth observations platforms that are out there, that all of this politicking would go out the window, that, you know, that the data was there. You couldn't hide how much water was in the dam, because we could measure this now. You know, you can't claim that there's a drought if there's a lot of soil moisture in your land. So, you know, so I'm wondering about, I mean, I know that politicians still will argue, but, you know, is this not a possibility that, you know, is there a place to aggregate this? I see Liliana gave us a link to Map Bios on the Amazon. So, you know, some kind of central, maybe Twins is the place to do this, where you aggregate this data. When I worked in the Okavango, we were the Okavango Research Institute was the Okavango River Basin hub for data sharing and collection. And what we found was not even our own country, Botswana, would give us the data we had, right? So, you know, and that's also going back a decade. So states, of course, are not going to share, but there must be, and I'm sure the people on this panel have examples of ways that they can speak directly to politicians with evidence that runs counter to their claims. And maybe we need a repository for such kinds of innovations.
No, this is great point, and we've been like really like excited by this opportunity of the Earth observation data sets, but at the same time, there are some gaps in terms of like the water quality monitoring at the local stream level and some of these, Larry, and we are very much trying to harness this the new satellite data revolution, right? So I mean, this really changes basically sets up new rules of game in the transboundary water management, and we certainly see that. But still, we need to engage the local communities and engage have the data at the local scale, especially from the social perspective, to understand the vulnerabilities and all that. And biological indicators, for example, as what Julie was talking about, some of that data is also needed to even to validate the satellite models. So,
right.
So it's kind of like
not to interrupt too much, but that's a super important point, right? Because where is a space for citizen science? In a lot of ungauged basins, this is where communities can become participants and made to feel owners and empowered in their own basins, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think this is a great point to like conclude this roundtable. I mean, we are at the time, you know, like where I wish we had the time to discuss, like we could easily have done on the third question alone an entire roundtable, but we just are not there. I think it's been really, really exciting to have this discussion. I really appreciate your participation across the time zones, like from all the way from West Coast to Thailand, and I really appreciate the active participation and sustained participation in our twin initiatives. I just want to end on a positive note is that the editors of Spring Water Security Series and Sustainability SDG Series have approached me. We have been talking within the Twin Secretariat about doing an edited book, and I have requested Bindu Panikkar and Karen Waddick to help me in terms of like editing that book. We'll be writing a call for book, like chapters. We would be focused not only on the track 3, track 2, track 1 diplomacy in organizing that book, but also these 4 river basins, and we'll invite you to submit the chapters and build off of the discussion that we are having, so we can publish that and let the rest of the world know about this work. But in addition to that, we are in the process of setting up a platform that has been keep coming back in terms of the data sets. And we will be getting back to you about the twin platform and also the Highlands to Oceans proposals. There are some proposals that are in pipeline. They're being reviewed. We are already starting to work on building those models in the basins where we can. But we will be reaching out to you about the more specific implementation of Highlands to Oceans integrated model work and science cooperation from that perspective. And we want to engage NPAC's community as well in this process. So with that closing, we are at 8:32. So before they kick us out, thank you so much for everybody's participation. We'll post the videos and chats and really appreciate your help in this process. Thank you so much and have a great day, and we'll be in touch with you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.